6:30. Teaching is so cool. So we'll be going. Every click record and tell me what's time. Oh, we're good now. Oh, as I'm fiddling with things. Hello, good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 on August 23rd. And so we will officially call this meeting to order. And to get us started, we'll do a quick flag salute. So if you could stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Thank you. I was going to do a super quick roll call, and I'd love to actually start at this end of the table. That's okay. Yes. Jan Bullerjack, District 2. Carly Hoover, District 1. Edna Morris. And the Morris, District 4.
Dave Larson, District 5.
And then, of course, we have with us Superintendent Herndon and many wonderful folks out here. So welcome to everyone, all of our guests attending both online and in person. I'm really glad that you're choosing to spend this time with us this evening. So I'll kick it over to Director Larson to get us started with our welcome message.
So we have some kind of meeting agreements taken from the Courageous Conversations book, and they are stay engaged, experience discomfort, be vulnerable, speak your truth, accept and accept non-closure. And for our land acknowledgement, we in the Tukwila School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is the traditional land of the First People of Seattle, the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and we recognize the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial.
Yes, great. So I see as well, we also have our other student representative, Samuel Fiapito joining us. So I'd love to give him an opportunity to just say hello and do his roll call. We'd like to unmute Sam.
Hello.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So glad that you're joining us this evening. So in Feel free, Samuel, of course, to jump in anytime you want. I know it's a little bit odd. I was on the virtual last meeting. It can be a little bit disjointed to be online while everyone's in person, but we'll roll with it, making this hybrid work. So in addition to our just kind of welcoming agreements that Director Larson just read, we also have board operating agreements. And these are kind of the ways in which we have agreed as a board. We re-review, that's not the word I was supposed to use, but you know what I mean. Annually to make sure that we are engaging with each other in a way that really is going to best serve the district. So I just wanted to point that out because it requires all of us to make sure that we are staying accountable to ourselves and to our team. And so if you're ever interested in looking at what those board agreements are, there's several copies here. I'll pop them over there in a little while. So with that, we'll a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I heard all the ayes, no one opposed, so it stands approved. So we move now to the public comments portion of our agenda. So just as a reminder, there's several ways that you can participate in public comment, either virtually or in person. If you're interested in doing public comment in person, there's a sign-up sheet right here at the front. Virtually, you can raise your hand using that feature in Zoom or type your name into the chat box. And of course, as always, folks can submit written public comment by noon the day of the meeting. Ms. Core, do you receive any written public comments? And no snaps. Okay, I'll wait just a second in case there's anyone fumbling to find that hand raise function on Zoom. Okay, great. There'll be, of course, as always, another opportunity at the end in case something comes up in our conversation that you just really want to provide some input or comment on. So we'll move now to reports, lots of reports today. We'll start with our student representative. Is there an order typically junior or senior that we start with, or does it matter? Doesn't matter? Okay, Dennis, do you want to get us started?
I don't have any further meeting.
Okay.
Yes, but after we still have.
Right on. Samuel, do you have anything you would like to?
I don't have nothing much to report on. It's just that that as we're going back to school, our leadership class, well, we have an in-person meeting tomorrow, and we're going to be making posters and then talking about our upcoming events. We also have a bulldog. We also have, I think this is the first time we're going to do like a bulldog day, which is going to be like a combination of the freshman orientation, as well as it's going to be also for the 10th through 12th graders, and it's going to be an opportunity to get your ASB cards, paperwork, and as well as the orientation done beforehand. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be taking pictures next Tuesday on the 30th. So yeah, I think that's all I had to report on. And I also did a summer program with Dennis as well, which was UW STEM, and it was a really fun opportunity. It was a really fun opportunity at UW. We got to take classes as well as build relationships with fellow other students from 3 other schools, and yeah, that was a great experience. I'm pretty sure that's all I had to report on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. All right, Dr. Herndon.
Great, good evening. Thank you everybody for being here, board members, staff, and other visitors that we have. So we have a lot of items in the question film, so I won't touch on a lot of those because there's a lot of information down there about things that we are working on. But a few items that I did want to touch on since our last meeting. One is we do have in our audience Mr. Michael Croyle, who was named the new principal for Thorndike Elementary. So we're very excited about that opportunity. And we previously had also identified and named Ms. Honey Noor at Aquila Elementary. So that's 2 of our 3 elementaries that are brand new principals. I know staff and community are very excited about both. There's a lot of hope and optimism about the leadership they're going to provide with the building. And I just want to make sure our team is wrapping our arms around them and their buildings to make them as successful as possible. So we're really excited about this. I know all of our principals are going to just really get everything they have this year, and we're going to continue to support them and the staff. So that's number 1. Number 2, we have obviously the start of school year happening next week. So in being out today, I was with Miss Martin delivering some back to school items for many of our staff in the building. So that was a lot of fun. Great opportunity to really start to build some district and team spirit. Tomorrow is also our back to school day with staff. So myself and President, Board Director Hoover are going to be addressing the staff in the morning, which is exciting. It's always a great kickoff for the beginning of the year. We also have some good professional development lined up for the rest of the day. I've seen some staff just starting to put together their rooms and get materials back in. So it's exciting to have that starting to happen as well as seeing students participating in their activities. Had the opportunity to stop by the garden at Foster, that's right by the tennis courts a couple of times, and see progress on that with Mr. Camacho and many of the students that are there. Lots of support from the community, so it's great to see that in place. and excited about all the things that are gonna happen moving forward. As well as lots of conversations that I've had with our administrative staff. There is a lot of excitement. It's kind of that, I think for a lot of people, a combination of excitement and anxiety that I think everybody feels about this time of year. There's just so much to do, but I think what I hear from most people is they feel pretty energized. Last year was a really tough year, following a really tough year. So we're hoping that this year, after the summer, that we are really looking forward to good solutions and where we can get supporting our students and families. And I think we have a lot of information to go on. So we've got many things to invest in to make ourselves better for professional development, working with community-based organizations. We're going to be scheduling time to get feedback from students, staff, and parents on our strategic plan and developing those SMART goals. Those are coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll definitely let people know when those are coming out. We're going to identify those dates to get feedback for those SMART goals. We don't have those yet, but we should by the end of this week be able to announce when those times are going to happen. Forgetting about that. And just really trying to develop more opportunities for our students to really have that student voice in a lot of both crafting and decision making that we have at all levels. So we're excited about integrating that into this school year as well. We'll be working with our principals and our directors and each of the departments on how to work on that also. So those are the main things that I've been gearing up for. Just really excited about the start of the school year. So next week, September 1st. So that's the date for all the people out there who may be watching and forgot what the date is. Realizing that all of a sudden August is almost over. It's true that next Thursday is September 1st. So it is kind of a big gulp that you get there, but I'm quite excited about it. I mean, I really do believe we've got a lot of good staff. We've had a lot of hiring happening. And I just really believe in our staff and our leadership. So I think we're going to do well. And the board too. I know we're all invested in this. I'm excited to continue to work with the board to develop this and have us get better. So that's what I have to say.
Questions you folks have? I got a few. Okay, I'm curious to just kind of checking in on the superintendent advisory board that you've been working on. Is that going to be ready to kind of to launch or whatever? Where are you at now?
Yeah, I'm waiting for students to be able to get back, so I want to get out notifications for students, and we typically do that via student email. So I plan on getting that notification out next week when we get started, and then put a timeline together and have that group together by the end of September. So that's my goal.
Okay. So about the strategic plan, I know we've had a few conversations about this, and the last time that the strategic plan was brought to the board, one of the concerns that we had was about the input that was received, or just the folks who participated in the groups, and really not feeling like it was super representative of our larger community, particularly with the understanding that we missed 2 elementary schools and the middle school. So that in mind, we've talked about the importance of this next phase being, I mean, the initial piece was really important, and this is even more critical.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not really particularly satisfied with not having a plan or some indicators for like what quality participation is going to look like. So I'd love to know, like, what is your outreach plan for actually getting folks involved, and what is kind of your bare minimum for different stakeholders to say, okay, we've gotten, maybe it should be way more, but let's say it's 10 students. Okay, we've only gotten 8 students, so we're not good to go yet. We need to get an additional student. So kind of what are those measures that y'all are looking at to ensure that we're getting the right, well-rounded, holistic perspective?
Yeah, so myself and Dr. Borshade and Dr. Steve have been meeting to figure out like what these next stages are going to look like. Dr. Borshade and myself were just talking about that about ways in which we can get that feedback in person for all of stakeholders, for staff, for students, and for parents to make sure that we do have a representative amount. So if we're talking about students, we can figure out what the number is going to be. It's going to be more than 10 for each of the levels, and make sure we're having those conversations at each of the elementary schools. In fact, Dr. Borstead and I were talking about that today about, what's the best way to get that involvement from students during the day, because after school, we're trying to get them to stay for meetings. So we just want to strategize about that, touch base with a couple of the principals, because we're talking about that, like, this is what we're thinking, is this a good time? Is this going to work well for getting student input, as well as staff input, and talking to parents. So that's what we're looking at to ensure that we do have adequate's not really the right word, but a good representation of each of those stakeholders into the SMART goal plan. Yeah.
So when you said that by the end of this week, there'd be some announcements around dates, you're talking about for community and parent input, not student.
And student, like, we want to identify at least the dates, how we get that, the best mechanism to get that back from them. And we may just say, like, start with the second week of school. We may identify that date a little bit later as a follow-up for students especially.
So I think I would just ask, when those dates come out, if we could also include some like benchmarks, these are our
Yeah.
goals, as far as getting input from various stakeholders.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one, is just on redistricting. We haven't talked about that in a while. Just kind of wanted to get an update, particularly around, we're about 2 months away, right? November, beginning of November is the deadline.
November
Just kind of
15th.
checking on the status of that.
Yeah, so I submitted a memo to the Puget Sound ESD about a week and a half ago, requesting, I had an initial conversation with Superintendent Welch. And he had requested that I put that into a formal memo. So I sent that to him, requesting additional time for us to have that redistricting done and then run our process as we normally would.
So you're talking about for the board director?
Correct.
Right, okay, so those are two separate things, which I'm curious about that one too. So the board director vacancy and then also just the redistricting timeline. So
Oh,
I know
okay.
they're
Yes.
kind of together,
Yeah.
but they're separate projects.
Yes, so, so that's the one on the board, district piece. And he got back to me and told me that he's still exploring what is in the statute and what the ESD can do for that, whether or not they can grant an extension or whether or not they just take that over and then can take it last minute from us. So that's number one. The other one is, so for the redistricting of the district by November 15th. We are still on pace for that. I've actually sent several emails to the Highline School District about that particular impact, about where that is. And haven't heard anything back. So we actually have a superintendent's meeting tomorrow for the region. And so I'll connect with Dr. Duran, who's the Highline superintendent, and say, hey, I've been trying to connect with you for several weeks and I'm not getting anything back. So, right, they do have some transition things, but we're safely within the timeline. I don't expect us to run into any issues with that. Some initial conversations with the company Semantic Data Analytics that's doing this for us. Had already done phase one, which was reviewing our current boundaries and the census data. So now what he was requesting is the information from Highline when they were saying that there were certain students that were in our area. Just knowing exactly where that is, because that was the only information I received from Highline was, hey, there are some students that we've been counting that are really yours, but I don't have any coordinates. I don't know where that is. So once we have that, then that will help him balance out whatever else he has to do for district. So, but as soon as I get more information from that, I'll send out an update on where that is. And then I'll also get from him any of the approval or legalistic timelines that have to be met and kind of where they are. So I can ask them, okay, now that we have this information, what's the next step? What's the date that you think you'll have that information by? So I'll connect with them and tomorrow.
And I can't remember, is this something that has to be like voted on and approved once it's finished?
I believe so, but we'll check he'll give me all the information about RCW or the WAC that we have.
So then October 25th would be the meeting to do that, or potentially the 8th, November 8th,
Yeah. could
to
be.
meet that deadline, no later than.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks, that's all my question.
So for the COVID-19 report, most of that is kind of embedded in this school safety plan down below in number I, which talks about a lot of the updates from King County Department of Health and what we have in place. I will say though, there's a lot of information in that. So what we're working on right now is really just to develop that into a 1 or 2 pager that's a lot easier to see and follow. So we're currently working on that. We're hoping to have that up and ready to go by the end of this week. That's our target date, but definitely before the beginning of school. Additionally, outside of COVID, you know, we do know and hear some of the concerns about some of the other health concerns that people may have, other viruses that are out there. So we're just going to check with King County Department of Health to see if they have any additional advisories. Or anything else that might be out there. The CDC does have some guidance around monkeypox and schools, but we've been following King County Department of Health, so I want to consult with them to see if they're taking any of that CDC guidance and are formulating anything for schools. And right now, I can't say that they do. I haven't seen any. We haven't had any communication about that, but I want to make a specific ask about that. From everything that I've been reading, it seems like that's a relatively low possibility about where that is, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we're trying to get ahead of whatever else they may have. And I'm hoping that King County Department of Health is the same way, just trying to get to.
How did we do on our last vaccine day? Did we get some kids being vaccinated for COVID, but also for other things?
Yes, so, Mr. Dragana, you know any of that information?
Yeah, we had. That was 174 total cases visited.
Okay, that's great.
And we continue to plan, Mr. Dragana and myself spoke with the provider that we had. And this last clinic was at Showalter. So we plan on hopefully sticking with this one because they do have other health services that they can help provide for us.
Yeah.
So we just want to take a look at the impact of what this partnership might feel for Tukwila students, staff, and families. So I think it could
Who
be
was
a
the
great
partner?
partnership.
It was Health Stepping Stones
Okay.
clinic located out of London.
So that's what we have in COVID-19.
I know, I think it was at the beginning of summer school, I had asked a question around the after-school program or other external partners that are coming in or serving our students. And if we had like a copy of their COVID plans to make sure that there was alignment between, and I'm just kind of wanted to check in particularly, I know I pointed out the last meeting that the new guidance specifically called out school and after school programs. And so I want to make sure that we are, if not in alignment, then we should be, that'd be great. But I also recognize that after school programs that serve our district also serve a lot of other districts. But you know, if it's not alignment, at the very least, I think we should have on record whatever is their process and their COVID plan is to ensure that it meets the minimum of what ours does. Because my guess is we probably get questions from parents too about what after school is doing. Is that something that was followed up on?
I think that, I don't know about for summer school, but coming into this school year, we can certainly make sure that any after-school providers have their COVID plans ready for any participants and families who may wonder, like, So what is your COVID plan for that, for our after school providers? But I hadn't heard much about any differences between the two of what we had, but
But have you seen it?
I haven't
Okay,
seen.
so we
their-
don't, we
their-
don't know, it's different if we haven't seen it, right?
So that's something we'll get in place before the school year starts, which is next Thursday. So we'll ask all of our after-school providers for them to provide us their COVID plans on what they have, and then we can compare it to what we've got.
Thank you. Any other questions on COVID? All right, director reports. Do you want to start, Jen?
Sure, I can say, because I think all I'm going to say is I just spent the last 2 weeks since our last meeting with a rising third grader, a rising kindergartner, and a preschooler. And I am so grateful to our staff and everything that they offer and the ways that they manage 8 hours a day with these little people. And remember that they are people. So I just really am thankful. And well, okay, I will say one more thing. I worked with 5 new Venezuelan kids that just crossed the border, had to be kept in detention away from their parents for a certain amount of time. They're now living at the church and they're so excited to go tomorrow and get enrolled. Now, I don't know if we can actually get enrolled tomorrow, but we're gonna try that. And so I did my job to get us 6 new enrollees. And I challenge every other board member to get us at least 6 new kids.
Okay.
Okay? All right, that is my report. Thank you.
Does it have to be like this year? Can it be in 6 years from now? I can do that. Awesome, thank you. So I'm also going to keep mine is also fairly short for a variety of reasons, but one of which is it's summer. And so like you all, I also took a little bit of a break. But with that, I think the biggest project that I've been working on is working on the Title IX task force, which of course we had some folks at our last meeting that shared some really powerful comments around the need for just more responsive practices in our district around sexual harassment, sexual violence, and then of course gender inclusion, which is some things I've been working on for a while. So I've worked with Dr. Herndon a little bit, and I've met with a few other folks, starting to craft the language for that task force charge, and then with the hope to bring that to the board next time. So that's kind of really been my main bucket of work that I'm just continuing with some gender inclusion related things. So yeah. That's good. I guess one of the things, kind of random, kind of work related, kind of board related, but the opportunity to go to the DO conference, which if you're not sure what the DO conference is, it's a conference that supports OSPI, that's sponsored by OSPI that supports 21st century program providers. So 21st century is like the after school program that we have in our program that supports social emotional learning, of course, educational enrichment. I was fortunate enough to go through work, but had the opportunity to spend time a little bit with Michael, our new Thorndike principal, and then also just, have the opportunity to be in space with a bunch of really amazing after school providers. So that was a big highlight of my last month.
Well, I too have spent several days with 2 6-year-olds. I can't be more opposite. And a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and I'm tired. And I too have great respect for our educators, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a more relaxed year for our staff. I know they deserve a good year.
So I got a couple of things. First of all, I want to check in with Samuel. So one of the things as student reps, you have the opportunity to participate in a program of other student reps from around the state that's run by the School Directors Association, WASA, and I made sure that Dennis got on that list, so he's going to get all the information about their meetings. They meet once a month, and you can go or you not go. But Samuel, I just wanted to give you that same opportunity, and if you're interested in that, you can just send me your email, and then I'll forward your email on to the person that runs that program down in Olympia, and you can participate in that as well, so.
Okay.
Great,
Mhm. Yeah, I'll send you
Um,
my email after.
okay, excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other thing I spent a little time reviewing, so last time we had a presentation on all the different survey data that we take for students, parents, and staff, and there's a huge amount of data in those surveys, and it's a pretty representative survey if you break it down by gender and by race and so forth. So it's worth, kind of paying attention to what some of the stuff is in there, and I'm interested. I don't know, Dennis, were you going to look at that data as well?
I don't have any thoughts yet, because I was, spending my time reading the stuff for this meeting.
Okay, that's fine. I
That's
just
a lot.
be really interested in, as long as you have access to it, is what your, as you go through it and what your analysis might be on it as well. So, and I'll just throw out mine is here. First of all, I think, a little feedback that we should give to, so the group that does this, these surveys is CEE, the Center for Educational Effectiveness. And one of the things I think we noted at the last meeting was when they broke down gender, they had, female, male, and other is probably not the right word to be using for that. I was looking at OSPI uses the term gender X, I've heard non-binary, but anyway, I think we should just probably give some feedback to them that, they picked the wrong word. So for that breakdown, hopefully they get that fixed. One of the areas that I was really interested in, we spend a fair amount of time talking about belonging, and one of the categories of questions that gets asked is belonging, and it consists of a variety of different things. But what's interesting to note is that district-wide, that was our highest category, and actually it beat all the other districts that took the test or took the survey as well. And so, and one of the questions that I think is particularly that I look at quite a bit is the question about kind of, do you see yourself in the curriculum? And I think we had like over 90% of our students said, yeah, they do, at least some of the time, not necessarily all. This is not necessarily to say that we don't have any work to do here, but I think that's I just want to acknowledge the staff for, they get that kind of response for welcoming our students back in a tough year. So I just wanted to acknowledge the staff for that's a really good piece of work to get that going. And the other one that is always interesting, kind of there's at least one adult that in the school that cares about me. That was like 82% of our staff or our students were feeling that. I feel good about my culture and ethnicity, 90%. So those are the kind of things that were not always the case a number of years ago. And so I think there's been significant progress made, which is great. In terms of some of the other points for probably improvement, one of the things the staff talked about a lot was kind of they need more professional development and social emotional learning, which hopefully we're, with Ruler and that whole initiative, hopefully we can kind of ramp that up. When I was looking at the August training, I didn't see a whole lot there, but maybe it's happening during the course of the year. But I think that's a big one. One of the things that was the staff rated pretty low was struggling students get the help they need. It's like 33%. So it was interesting that it's one of those gap things, which is always interesting. The gap. The students said that was like 77%. The staff said 33%. Anyway, so there's, I think there's some work to be done there. One of the interesting things, another one from the staff was district communicates effectively, clear vision. I think the whole work around the strategic plan and getting that a little solid and a clear vision out, that is going to hopefully address some of that issue. The families, it was interesting. One of the things that was fairly low rated was rigorous courses, which it's interesting. We have on our agenda tonight to talk about AP classes, which there's some kind of sobering data about how the AP is going. It's obviously impacted by COVID. So anyway, that's in areas that the families feel like we need some improvement in. And the other one on the families was, and this was kind of unique to Foster High School, was they wanted more communication about what's going on, which is, to some degree, you kind of expect, elementary schools are going to communicate with their students more. As students mature, they're probably less communicating with their parents. But so anyway, that's an area that we might look at. And then final student one was, the one that was kind of low that could just use some improvement. All students are held to the same behavior. Most students are respectful. That was like 39% of other students. So that's another area where it kind of ties into the social emotional learning and all that. So anyway, we have initiatives going on in that. The other thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit was a legislative issue. So in the 21 legislative session, the legislature initiated a work group to look at compensation throughout the system. And that work group has just published their initial recommendations, which they're they have a public comment period at the moment, which they'll pass on to the legislature. The legislature tends to not take all the recommendations to these things, particularly the ones that cost a lot of money. They tend to push down the line a little bit. But anyway, I won't go through all of these because there's a bunch of them, but there's, the big one is just to allocate a lot more money to districts for the different pay levels. I mean, we know that because in our district, to have competitive pay, you need, more money than what the state provides us. And so they're talking about raising that allocation to the school districts kind of across the board. And so that one, it's interesting. They didn't have the total cost for that. That would be a big cost item. So we'll see how that one fares in the legislature. But there are a few other ones. They're recommending some bonuses for various, particularly hiring and retention bonuses for special education teachers, for bilingual teachers, which would be interesting. They're also recommending bonuses for high poverty schools for all staff. Now, right now, you can get a high poverty school bonus if you're a national board certified teacher, but they're recommending just doing it for all. So that would be really interesting for our schools, since I think basically it's still all of our schools qualify as a high poverty school in that sense. It's interesting that one thing they recommend continuing was the recommendations from the staff enrichment work group, which I kind of went through this with an equity lens. And the problem with the recommendations from the staff enrichment work group is they recommend more staffing for schools, but it's the same for everybody. So the example I would use under their recommendations, the school with 90% poverty would get the same social worker allocation as a school with 5% poverty, which makes no sense. And I'm going to provide that input as well on this one. So anyway, there's the other last one I'll just mention is the increase in school substitutes. So right now, the state funds us for about 4 substitute days per teacher. The reality is they did actually a survey across the state, and the average is 12. So it's another area where the state is significantly underfunding. And what that means is that we have to make it up somewhere else, which is usually the local school levy, or we have to pull it out of BEA, which means there's less of something else. So anyway, it'll be, like I say, usually the legislature kind of cherry picks out some of these things to do, but it was an interesting thing that I'm going to provide some input on. That's what I got.
Has that 12 hours been consistent like pre-pandemic?
I don't know the answer to that question. I just know that they did I think they said in this report they did this is probably OSBI that did this survey. Yeah, I would suspect that last year, for example, was an anomaly.
Yeah.
I would suspect that 12 was before pre-COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
Does
make any permanent funding based on last year's,
Yeah.
because we had a lot of people out with quarantines and all that kind of stuff. So that's, yeah, I think the 12, from what I've seen before, the 12 is kind of the pre-COVID. That's it.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. We will move now to the consent agenda. Motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it stands approved as presented. So now we'll move to the questions only presentation. So just kind of as a reminder, we all receive these presentations several days, sometimes in advance. And we get the opportunity to ask any questions that we would like to ask about these. And then those questions get answered. If you're following on board docs, the questions, the responses to those questions get added in individual items as well. So if you are interested in what kind of questions the board's asking outside of the meeting, please take a look at that. And so then any other questions, kind of a one by one. So any additional questions on the financial forecast? Okay, B, monthly budget status report. C, budget presentation.
so yeah,
Come on to the hot seat, Ms. Birdsong.
this is kind of the, first one of these is kind of the proverbial question, as I try and figure out, how we can address this special education overspend year after year. And I don't know if you've had, I mean, when I'm looking at the 6-year or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year trend there, I see, it goes up and down and up and down. I mean, do we have any idea, like in 18-19, it was 15%, and now looks like we're going back up into the 41, 40 area. Do we have any idea, why it goes low and why it goes high? And is that something at all under our control at all?
So when I looked at that particular year, I looked at the staffing and I
Yeah.
also looked at the MSOCs, because we spend a lot of money sending students out or
Yeah.
additional supports and for staffing. And so for that particular year, I had to like triple check my numbers because we only spent, it was like 237,000. Like, how, why,
Right.
what happened? And
Right.
then the next year it doubled and then almost tripled.
Yeah.
So during that time, we must not have had a lot of staffing and or additional student needs. Now, when we have outside placements, a lot of that is covered by the federal dollars, which isn't reflected here. But this is First Street program 2100. So it looks like we just did not need those additional supports during that time.
Okay, yeah, it's, so what I understand is kind of that, special education students, I mean, maybe just a few of them that have a high need
Yeah,
can blow a budget up pretty quickly.
yes,
And so if they come or they go.
right.
that's
Once you
part
add
of
on
what's-
this extra 1-to-1.
Yeah, right.
it gets-
And the other thing, I don't know if you started to, but I'm still interested in this, whether we can get some of the special education stuff funded out of the Medicaid program. And because I assume that the vast majority of our students qualify for what's called Apple Health in the state, which is Medicaid. And a lot of these special education services could be covered by that. And that's just an ongoing, I've sent you some information on that before. So I'm really interested in if we need to do some advocacy with the state on that to get that so that we can get a lot of those services covered, particularly things like, I think somewhere said like we have 4 or 5 speech language pathologists, which seems to be would be a primary to get covered by Medicaid, if we can figure out how to do it without, breaking the bank in terms of how much time we have to spend to fill out paperwork to do it. But anyway, that's just an ongoing. Love to hear whatever, how we can do some kind of advocacy to help get that.
Yeah, Jennifer, the director of special education, and I are working together.
Okay, great.
Is it a staffing issue? that we just don't have the staff to track that. Those Medicaid payments or,
So I would defer it to Ms. Jones, just because she has more, details on what capacity that would take. from her.
yeah,
Sure, so with reimbursement, there's a lot of factors. And I had an opportunity to talk to Director Larson about this at one of our budget committee or community meetings. So it's a huge lift for all of our ESA support staff, since they do have to log every single therapy session and the data that goes along with that. And so the time that it takes to do all of that additional paperwork and put that into a system. And the system itself, we have to have a platform, we need to pay for the platform that, we put the data into, and someone that can oversee the management of that computer platform system. So it would probably be, I would suspect, a bargaining condition to talk, because it will be additional things added to our plate that haven't been here before. But I am reaching out to some neighboring districts as far as, how that's working in other.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, is a cost benefit analysis someplace that we can
And
explore.
there's also the licensure piece, so SLPs and some of our ESA folks will go ahead and let their licensure lapse or their credentials lapse. They only have to have their ESA credentials through OSPI. And so if you, there was a time where you had to have your licensure in order to file. And so a lot of the school-based folks have got really smart about that, and they thought, well, I don't need this in order to be employed, and so they wouldn't have to file and be providers of doing that data. So that was one thing we had talked about, and I need to just double check on that.
Yeah, and the other part of it is the interest of it. So in this state, the group that runs all the Medicaid stuff is the Healthcare Authority. And I know they had a little contact with the person that runs this program down there. Things have gotten some more flexibility, and I know other states around the union are working with the federal government to make things more flexible. I mean, ideally, we could get something like, well, if you have such and such percentage of Medicaid eligible students and, then we'll just get paid for, 4 SOPs or something. I mean, that's where it would be nice to get there somehow. And I'd like to explore that, with the Healthcare Authority, because it sounds like in recent years, things have gotten more flexible, and if states can get a little bit creative about this, then maybe we could do it without having quite so much paperwork. Anyway, that's just an ongoing thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was the on page 14, it's we talked about a little bit the sub situation. So you put in here this year significant increase in the budget to pay for subs, and I'm just curious. Like I say, what we had in there last year was 272,000, which is that would clearly not be enough for given last year, because last year with COVID and all that kind of stuff. But going forward, do you think that, I mean, what you put in here was like 596,000 for this year? Is that kind of assuming that we're going to have another COVID-like year, or is that, because that's, yeah.
So that is actually, based on kind of what I'm seeing, so.
From this last year?
Correct, so I'm
Okay.
sure that everybody's aware that teachers they're tired, they're burned out. I really don't see that going away as quickly as we would like it to go away.
Okay,
So I'm just being proactive
Yeah.
with that, because I don't see it decreasing much. So it's a little, it may be a little inflated, but I do not see that it's gonna shrink as much as we would like. And then the prior year, oddly enough, I had budgeted 173.8, and it came in at about 183, which is odd. But that's just how it.
okay, so this is one we probably should watch. I mean, hopefully the next year it'll start to
go
down
back
a little bit, because, you know, at 586, that's about 25 days per teacher. That's a lot, and it's a lot more than the state funds is for, but, anyway, yeah, that's, I have on my list. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be advocating with the state, but the state fund is 4, which is totally inadequate. So anyway, we need to get some help on that, because that's another one of those areas that we got to find from somewhere else. Let's see, I think. Oh, the last one I had was this issue of the bond levy and how much we're flexing. So, you know, this year in 23, those of us that are taxpayers in this district noticed a fairly significant bump up in the tax rate from the school district. And when I traced it back, it was kind of the amount we're pulling for the bond. I guess it was on the page 23. And I was curious, you're answering my question about this. You said 32, yeah, 32. You said that there's you have a cushion. Can you explain what when you, so presumably that we as a district, you as a district or CFO decide how much? I mean, we have the numbers on 32 or the calculations from presumably from the bond council, right? When we sold our bonds, this is how much interest we need to pay every year and interest and principal. So can you explain to me what this, I mean, I'm expecting that that's just the number that we would collect every year. So it sounds like there's something else in this process with involving a cushion.
Yeah, so as the board is aware that there was an under collection that happened a couple years ago.
Okay,
And so we had to make up for the
Right.
under collection. And
Okay.
when we did that, it helped bring us back to having a zero balance, right?
Right.
And you don't want to necessarily have a zero balance. Now, there's a cap on how much you can actually keep as a cushion.
yeah,
But if something was to ever go wrong, right, like something just doesn't go right, you want to kind of have a little cushion. And so I had spoke to.
when you say
Ryan.
cushion, you mean, so I assume, I mean, the big thing that can go wrong when you're collecting bond fund is like people default, they simply don't pay the
Correct,
bill.
they don't.
Yeah,
And
okay,
you're
that's
still,
what I'm
you're still liable.
Yeah,
to,
correct.
to
Yeah,
pay-
yeah,
to
right.
pay your debt. And when
Okay.
I spoke to Ryan, he was saying, hey, this isn't a bad thing, plus because we're collecting less, that rate should go down. So it's not, so the taxpayers aren't gonna keep paying that rate, it should go back down and level itself out. And then another thing to keep in mind too, is that the way we pay our debts are, even though we're in a fiscal year, it's based on the calendar year.
right.
And so I always try to keep that in mind when I build this. So I mean, if we wanted to levy a little less, we do have that flexibility. But it just depends on how much you really want to have, just in case, some people say, you know what, I don't want to tax anymore,
Right,
so.
yeah, and we usually, I think the collection rate is usually fairly high, it's 95 to 90, I mean,
Correct,
Pretty,
yeah, we
so-
do pretty good.
so we have a little, but,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Don't let people know.
So people, I mean, for the most part, even during the economic downturn several years ago, tax collection was still. pretty
Yeah,
high.
yeah.
I mean, it was influenced very little.
Right.
So for the most part, tax collection is pretty high, and as you know, there's a large commercial base here as
Right.
well. That the tax collection helps keep everything low. In this case, as we've spoken about for the last couple of years, what we're really trying to do is we may be operating a little more conservatively fiscally, but that helps us eventually gain back our better bond rating, which had taken a pretty big hit over the previous years by not being fiscally conservative and running out of money or having a zero balance. So in this case, following that bond council advice and building in that cushion, hopefully eventually gets us back to getting a rating. So during the last bond rating from Moody's, they didn't move us up, but they didn't move us down. So I think they're waiting to see several years of us maintaining
Right.
good fiscal policy. And this is just good fiscal policy.
Right.
So King County assessment should be coming out pretty soon if they haven't already. This is an inverse relationship piece, so this is what most people think, that when their property values go up, we somehow collect more money. We don't. we collect a set amount. So typically what happens is that the rate goes down because the assessed values go up. There's an inverse relationship. If your property taxes are going up, it also means commercial property taxes are going up, which again helps with lower tax rates. So I think it's just following the fiscal policy.
Did we, so you said a few years ago we undercollected, which is what I surmised. Did we figure out why we undercollected?
I think it was just the transition.
Just understand, okay,
communication,
yeah,
And then
okay.
once it was caught,
Okay. All right. Yeah, because it's, I don't know, I saw this little tweet somewhere that the city, people were complaining about their taxes going, the city just said, oh, this is the school district's fault. So to the extent that we can keep it level, it's good. So, okay, that sounds good. That's all I had on the budget.
Always have fun.
Thank you. Any other questions on the? Saying this out loud, it's less for Ms. Birdsong, and just, I'm excited to see and looking forward to seeing some of the plans that are gonna be associated with the board priorities that are outlined there. We've been asking for several months now, so hopefully those will be coming very soon so that we can actually see how our money will be spent. Okay, any questions around summer school? Yes.
There was just Q&A report where someone asked, is there a plan to get feedback from students and parents on some of the experience? And the answer didn't really explain if they had one or not, so I was just wondering, whoever answered that question is, like, what kind of plan is for that?
the plan to get feedback from parents and students would be something that we would do going forward. And that would be a survey that we would send out, and that would go out with the progress reports that students would receive after summer school is over. So we said we would send that out 2 weeks after, we said we send that out during the second week of school. And so when we send that out, then we would give them an opportunity to respond during that.
And even at like the credit earning rates for high school, I was wondering if like the students who enrolled but they didn't attend, do those students kind of get a fail on the semester, or does it not, does it count?
That would be something that I need to get back to you.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that question?
I just was a little, there was a comment that, we didn't accept out of district students for summer school. But we did for,
Transportation.
but there were numbers there, so I'm still confused as to the others.
So I did reach out to our director of transportation to find out exactly, and in asking that question initially, the response was, we did have current students out of the district that was school year. But she said that during the route, during the summer school route, she did not pick up any students that were out of district. And so when she answered the question, she thought I was asking the question in reference to the school year. So that's the 20 represents the number for the school year. When we say out of district.
So the numbers on the report for summer school aren't really summer school numbers.
In terms of, they are summer school numbers, but for out of district, she was of the mindset that we were talking about the school year.
Oh,
That was her part. That was
yeah, I
her-
was confused by that. Thank you.
So I'm always really interested in like kind of follow up. And so I was wanting to ask questions around the difference between total enrolled and participated. So I was curious, like that's not a small number. Was there any outreach done to those folks that had enrolled, and kind of what did that look like?
From my understanding, there was follow-up phone calls to parents and families who enrolled but didn't participate. And there was, they just didn't want to participate. Other plans were made.
Okay. Is it, so we don't have I guess the process for like unenrolling, or is, is that not a thing because it's summer? I guess what would the,
That will be something I need to look into.
okay,
I heard from someone who did make the phone calls, that some of them were not clear at all when it started until it started.
Okay.
But still. Yeah, it's quite a differentiation between participants and.
yeah, I was really surprised to see, that's why I asked, because I would assume like based on those descriptions, that's what it meant, but then when I saw that, wow, that seems like a lot. Okay, okay, so some perhaps made other plans, some, maybe a few. Some miscommunications around things, okay. Thank
It would
you.
be, I'm sorry, it would be interesting to note on that, if there were particular groups that didn't get the information. Particular language groups or particular neighborhoods, was it, you know, Cascade View, well, no, because they had a really good representation, but was it particular groups of apartments that didn't get it? How did that happen?
I can follow up.
Thank you.
And then just wanted to just generally say just a huge thank you to Mr. Coral, your work this year, getting summer school prepared. I know it was a lot of work. And just every time I saw you, you just were so steadfast and like just leaning in all the time. So thank you. And I think it shows in the reflection that we got today. And thank you very much for your response on particularly 11 around the strengths and opportunities. I know that there's like a lot of information still missing, but like those are the types of simple, but types of things that we really want to see more often. Simple, like these are the strengths. This is what we saw. This is what we're an opportunity we see for growth. And yeah, that's really great. So thank you. The only thing I'm going to say that is left my mind, so that's okay.
I was going to say also that the teacher, when I usually went and picked up the leftover lunches on Thursdays. Those teachers that committed to summer school were so committed. They were excited to be teaching summer school. And, you know, we'd heard so much about, you know, teachers were tired, and that was true. And yet these teachers pulled together that extra strength to do what, 4 more weeks? Yeah.
When I visited, they were meeting.
Yeah, they were engaged, yeah.
I think one of the lessons that we learned over the years from summer school too, and I've heard this mentioned in other districts, is because of the kind of smaller class sizes. I mean, that makes a huge difference, and they have more time to actually do the work that they want to do, which is a good lesson to be. It's one of the reasons I like to advocate for smaller class sizes, just in general, you know, because it can make a huge, particularly in our district. I think.
Did you have anything else about summer school?
Yeah, the one part about at the middle school, the Shell Middle School, where it says their own transportation to Shell. And it said most of them were walking, I'm not sure if that's like, I mean, is that the data or something, or is it like actually no one got transportation to school?
Let me check into that. Data for sure, Walter.
Awesome, thank you. We'll move, I think, next to 2, which is. Oh, yeah, for the first read of the board policies.
So this 2140 is this is a result of a thing passed by the legislature a couple of years ago to say that counselors have to spend at least 80% of their time in direct. So this is just modifying our policies to be consistent with the law. What I'm curious about is, and I ask it's kind of, I'm trying to figure out how we could potentially report back to the legislature. Did this really work out well for us, or is it because one of the things is, let's see, I mean, on surface, it sounds like it's a good thing, but if you're taking them away from other program planning and school support activities, which is kind of a vague area, has this worked out well for us? Or is there something the legislature should know about, something that maybe didn't work out well?
So this is the plan that should be more into effect this coming school year.
Okay, all right, so we don't know yet, okay, okay. Just, you have a sense at all? I mean, does it sound like it should be a good thing, or? Don't know,
I would need to see. and
Okay.
look at the schools to see how it actually works. And if it doesn't, then provide that feedback at this point. I wouldn't know.
yeah, it's an interesting one, because it's kind of one of those almost micromanaging by the legislature, and so that's why I'm really interested in whether, particularly for us, whether it works or not works, and so, okay. That's why I think.
I don't have anyone in this one, but I did remember my last question, or the last one, is that okay? There were just two, we'd asked about like pre and post academic, and then something about the AHA learning. And you know, sort of, there's more information about those coming, so I think my general question is like, was this report a little bit premature to not really have the full picture of what summer school looked like? Would it be useful if next summer, perhaps it was in September, so we actually had all of that information?
That would give us a lot more time to get the
Okay.
information. That's what we-
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think we'll make that adjustment for next time. Okay, so then, any questions on iReady? Oh, yeah, sorry, the board policy.
I don't have anything. I just want to make sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
Third, ready for ready.
Ready for iReady.
I'm curious. And I guess, I don't know, Dr. Borchet, you gave this answer, so maybe it's like, it's like, I was curious, why did Foster opt out not to take the iReady diagnostic? You said it was reported that impact assessment has not been clearly defined. Can you give a little more? Little more substance on that one?
Yeah, so when I look at this learning tool, I am learning a lot about what has happened.
Yeah.
And what is going to.
Right,
And so I would say that there has been apparently a misunderstanding about what needs to happen with that already. But going forward, principals understand that everyone will take that already.
okay,
3 times.
okay, so this is the communication, okay. I guess the other, so in the iReady analysis, so it initially started out with, you know, what I call proficiency versus growth. And for me, I'm always much more interested in growth, because, you know, I mean, we are where we are, but if you grow the students, then proficiency will take care of itself. So the report was kind of, I mean, it had growth at the end. I would kind of almost put the growth first, and in particular, she was doing a lot of mean level grade increase, which to me is not the greatest. Mean averages hide a lot, you know, of range and who's high and who's low and so forth. So that's why I asked for this analysis, which she did, which was really interesting, which was related to, you know, what in iReady is called typical growth and stretch growth. So typical growth is like 1 grade level, stretch is more. And we know for our students that are, you know, more than 2 grade levels behind, they're going to have to be, we have to be hitting that stretch, you know, for several years, in fact, to get them up there. And so to me, the most interesting is to when you break it down by school and grade level, you see, okay, where is growth really happening at a, you know, at a really great rate, and where is it not happening? And that's where, to me, the analysis, and it's not for us to do that, but you guys to do that and figure out, okay, what's going on in those classrooms. So when I was looking at, you know, math, Cascade View, 2nd grade, you know, these 63% of the students that are 2 or more grade levels are getting stretch growth. I mean, that's a phenomenal number, actually. So I want to know what's going on in that classroom. Or, I mean, this is actually multiple classrooms because it's a grade level, so there could be 2 or 3. I guess the other question, focusing on that one, you say 60% had typical growth and 63% stretch growth. that's more than, the question is, if they achieve stretch growth, that means they also got their typical growth, because they grow more than that. I mean, I'm looking at those 60 plus 63, that doesn't make sense to me. Adds up to more than 100%.
The 60
Yeah.
includes the 63. I mean, the 63 includes the 60.
That's my question.
So I believe this is a parent analysis. So it's like, so I think they're counting, so I believe they're counting kids like after they make typical growth, then they make stretch growth.
Okay, so that kid that did stretch growth would be, he would be, or they would be in typical growth and in stretch growth, because they did both. Okay, so that would make sense as to why it adds up to more than 100%, okay. But still, 63, that's an eye-popping number, which is what we need. On the other hand, you know, you look at some of the other ones that are really low, like Thorndike grade 3, nobody that had 2 or more grade levels below. And so then the question is, okay, what's going on in those classrooms? And then how do we so this is the analysis that I'm really interested in, to say, you know, in terms of growth, and then the question is, yeah, I mean, what are we doing with this data to transfer, which is the question for, and I know you guys are still absorbing this, but does that make sense to you as a T&L person, as a way of doing this analysis? Okay, that's great.
And then looking more so at the domains in terms of what needs to happen.
Yeah, in each children, yeah, okay. So I don't know, that's just for future, I think. Like I say, what's most interesting to me is these growth numbers, and then where we go from there. So that's yeah, that's just my comment on that one. So I have Robert.
Okay, yeah, and not to reiterate too much, but I think as with many things, kind of our biggest, and I was saying for me, is what now, right? What is this data? What does that mean now? So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing more on that. Okay, AP college report.
So the AP, first of all, these numbers are pretty, I guess, disappointing would be the word. I mean, because, it was only about, I think, 4 years ago that Foster High School won a national award from the College Board for outstanding AP program, particularly, you know, for the demographics that was being served. And so obviously COVID, you know, had a significant impact on this. I'm just I'm also curious, a number of years ago, we used to get this report, which you just print off, and is that no longer available? And it's perfect, it had me, gave me everything I absolutely know. Yeah,
I went through that college board thing.
okay,
Maybe it's not ready yet, or maybe they changed something about the stage number.
yeah, because this one also gave the comparison to the state, and so it was perfect, it was a lovely report, and required essentially no
I know,
work.
you
It just
print it out.
printed it out. Okay, so I'm curious, I guess, yeah, obviously, we're gonna have to do some analysis on this stuff. The one bright spot I think that's worth pointing out in all this stuff is the human geography data, which that's an area, if I understand that, of course, properly, it's where we had, you know, ethnic studies come in a lot in that course, and so therefore that's probably the highest participation rate of any of our students who participated in that one. So that's a really good, hopefully that will be maybe the model for how to rejuvenate. I mean, we lost a lot on the science and math areas, which yeah, that's an area that clearly COVID is impacting. And so I don't know, yeah, if we were to find that magic report, that'd be great. Also, if you could find the state averages, that would be good too. I mean, when you look at the global averages, they didn't have that big decline that we had. So that's kind of interesting to note. I have a feeling that it probably, as everything, COVID impacted low income students, students from low income backgrounds probably more than anybody else, which is why it's showing up in ours more than others. So,
It'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I will be interested, I guess, it's more a question for Foster, how they're, what their take on this is and how they're gonna kind of try and redevelop these opportunities, because that was one of the things that in our surveys, the parent particularly wanted to see more rigor. And so this is one of the areas that we have rigor in. So hopefully we can build this program up. So,
Yeah, and for me, this is the place where we need the narrative from the teachers, not as a criticism or judgment, saying, why did your scores go down? But just as a curiosity, what do they think was the cause? And what do they need if there's something that they need to turn this around?
yeah, I don't, Dennis, do you have any thoughts on AP classes? Do you feel like there's enough of them?
Yeah, I was,
And how did, I don't know if you participated in one last year?
yeah, I did, I
Okay.
took the human geography one.
Okay, good.
Was good, that's how we got, the higher score, but, I think. I think the, the decline of passing rate is not nice to look at.
Yeah,
But, we do want to like be able to continue offering students these courses and, as we see a decline in like the sciences and the math department of the AP. And, statistics no longer offered this year. So I would love to know if you guys have any plans on kind of advertising or like outreaching to the students to kind of try to get them to kind of sign up for these classes. I understand COVID is also a factor in this, but if it keeps declining, then we kind of have to get it up before we can't do it anymore. And I think one of the things where the student performance kind of dipped this year was obviously COVID again, but also that students weren't really well prepared and they weren't really advertised well in how vigorous these courses are. So maybe kind of helping prepare them, that this is a college class. And having some kind of like the first 2 weeks where they, the expectation that they have to study on their own, because I know that in my class, a lot of students kind of study in the last 2 weeks. Of that. A lot of the score thought out was because students didn't really prepare well. So being able to help them prepare for those college classes before they sign up and having them have the expectation to kind of be able to help, Yeah.
thanks, Dennis. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we should have those discussions, I guess, with Foster at some point. That's all I got for, where are we? Oh, AP.
H, year-end assessment update. SPAC. Any additional questions on this one?
Again, given a time, I mean, is it too early for you to get all the information that you need?
This was time for development.
Okay.
It's my time to develop. It's the weed stuff. We really waiting on this. So, weight cast, the science, that's SBA, so to speak, that's been a little long in coming out as well. So weed is a new assessment even in the state, so I understand that.
So maybe we could take that into consideration. for the last few.
Yeah. And it might be a little bit of too. After they do, fully. Get the assessment.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting, the graphs they produced about the iReady pass rate versus the SPAC pass rates. And iReady has always claimed that they're a really good predictor. of SPAC. These numbers don't indicate that's the case.
They only went 7%, they get the plus minus for 7% on the check. So that's like a 14% kind of
Yeah,
area that they had, and I think they were within 20. Is that what it was this year?
yeah, it's just interesting.
I was wondering if you guys have any measures happening in this year to ensure that students kind of, like, come up prepared with the FBA.
One of the things we are doing is, students 9 through 12 will be taking the iReady in reading and math.
And that's the assessment.
They will test the Common Core standards in a formative manner 3 times a year, so we can monitor progress throughout the year. And then the SBA at the end is the summative assessment for all of those Common Core standards throughout the year. So you have, the students will be exposed to the standards that are here in 3 semesters, so to speak. And then we're gonna monitor those as we go. The other piece that I already have that we're gonna try to get going this year are the interventions. Built into the program for reading and for math. That place a student right at their level, where they currently test. So that they get interventions at that level and gradually once they will change.
What do you mean intervention?
So interventions is, let's say you take an assessment and whatever a standard 1.5 is, you just like don't. And so the intervention will bring you back and have you do some reteaching, but some practicing that particular standard. So that you'll become a master, you get mastery of the proficiency.
So would they be required to keep doing those, like, coursework in priority, or is that just like in the suggestions that we give them?
That's gonna be a building decision. So, yeah, it'll be good, but my sense is that they will be required to do the intervention.
I'm curious too, when you say prepare students, when you think about like what's prepared you, and what do you feel like would be beneficial?
Especially in math part. Some like some of the questions, it didn't like quite reach the level where I was taught, and I was like the grade ahead in math. So that's probably something up with the SBA, so it's not so far off, but that's one thing. And then I think for reading, test taking is like a strength. It doesn't kind of define how students, but also the way that the SBA is done is that you have to write like a bunch of essays in a timeline of like an hour or 2, right? So that's not good, frankly.
Yeah.
So you can't really change the way the test is made. So kind of helping students prepare for how to take the test and these are the things. And kind of refreshing some of those math skills as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we do have these things called ICA and IBAs, and those tests mimic the SBA. Right down to where you can use the tools that are embedded in the assessment, you can practice those. And one of these interim assessments is more of a summative nature, so you get to practice the SBA before we did it. And the other part just has certain parts of the SBA, so the standards. But what we found with schools that do that, expose their students to the SBA before they take it, do better than the ones that do.
Wouldn't that be something you guys would over to do with you?
Yeah.
That's just.
Thank you. Okay. Any other things on that one? Okay, school safety plans. There's 2 things embedded in this one. So one is more around like just emergency preparedness. And the other one is specific to COVID. So. One of the questions is what is the status of the different components outlined kind of in the there on emergency preparedness and. So I guess maybe a more direct question would be, are all of these things happening? And are they all actually in place at schools, at all the buildings and for the district level and being implemented correctly?
They are all part of the plan. They are not all at the same level of communication at each of the buildings, at each of the schools. But I will say that I call out two of them, which for sure are at high levels of implementation, which would be the physical training module
Mhm.
and the monthly safety.
Okay. So is there kind of a plan I'm sorry if it's in here, being developed or worked on to get everybody up to that same implementation standard?
Then, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for the unified man.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's actually something that we work with our community partners to accomplish. A couple of fire and proposals are part of that. They are familiar with the plan and will come in and do training exercises with the facilitated mainly by the school district.
Mhm.
That hit pause for the last couple of years, but we can.
Okay.
And that is the plan, and I think one of our responses included making sure that that is the topic of our monthly state district safety meeting. We go to the school for having safety meetings, but the district is required also to do full safety committee meetings, which includes at least one representative from each school.
How much does the district is like this building practice these things?
That is not at a high level.
Okay, so when we think about modeling, right, it would probably be ideal for us, right, in this space to really get those things locked in. So that as we're starting to implement those in schools or getting to the high level, we can be like, here's the standard, right? See us do it, living at the standard. Now we're all gonna get everybody up here. Thank you. The question was around COVID, the COVID plan. Were there any emergency preparedness for the things, I guess, before there? COVID plan looks great. It's detailed, thank you. So there are two questions I had. One, I tried to click on the templates for the letters. I was able to get the English ones, but I just wanted to confirm that we actually already have prepared all of the. Yeah, we're doing okay. So it'll be like communication happened so fast. That's wonderful. And then the other piece, you know, I asked the question, which I'm sorry, I know it's like a repetitive answer around how are we going to make sure that folks know? And I think the reason why I asked that question is because, you know, there was a plan in place last year too, right? Maybe it might not have been, I think, as detailed and outlined, particularly thinking about like the communication components that you presented last time. But I think I just worry about, you know, but we got about midway through the school year and nobody knew what was going on, even though there had been communication before. So I guess maybe a better question would have been, what are we going to do different this time? And ensuring that not only people are being communicated with about the plan, but actually like understanding or ensuring that folks actually are reading the communications about these things. And then sorry.
Pop quizzes would be a good idea.
And then is there like any like building specific training maybe that's happening about like how this is actually executed when something happens, like almost like a trial or a mock?
So, building principals will be with their staff tomorrow and Thursday, Tuesday, tomorrow. And the plan is for them to communicate
This plan, okay.
yes, to everyone so that they know that the plan is here and that they understand it and they'll go into further detail. But the goal is to make sure that everyone understands that the plan is here on the front end versus the back end. And share out with parents as well. Then we'll be updating the website once we, before school starts.
Okay.
So I have a comment about, maybe you already said this, but the almost always responses that are like on number 3. I've got police at the church, so I'm trying to do both things, but why does it say almost always? What's the consequence when people don't? follow the rules or whatever? Isn't there a consequence? But I have to go out here and talk to the police, so, sorry.
So that was in relation to the safety drills. Says safety drills in accordance with the law must occur monthly at all times. They are implemented almost always.
So it's a fact that there were a couple misses in some of the schools. So it didn't happen all. So we just wanted to be
Accurate.
into that and.
Transparent, thank you. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm.
So how do you hold those people accountable to do that?
So to me, I mean, one of those things, this is part of our evaluation system, are you meeting some of the minimum requirements, so. We can note that, I mean, that's all part of your responsibilities of what you have to be responsible. So those are things that we can note in our, through our evaluation system.
I probably shouldn't say this because I know we are legally obligated to do monthly, and 1 month of missing it for whatever reason also is not, to me, doesn't feel like this big thing that requires a large level of accountability, reminders, of course. You know, it would, to me, it would be like, is there a pattern of missing things? Then I would be like, okay, what's happening here? What conversations are happening? And where's that accountability now? So my assumption in reading almost always is that maybe it's like 1 or 2, or, you know, a handful that might have been missing. I personally was worried about that, but I, you know, totally understand why it would be. Okay, any COVID things from you? No, okay. That's really important, and I think we'll definitely want to make sure that we're like getting input from you and Sam, as you know, as the first few weeks of school get started, on just how things are feeling, particularly. Oh, I guess that actually does remind me, are you hoping to do to kind of continue to do some surveying of staff and students kind of throughout the year? Okay. Will that be kind of, I guess, how will that be scheduled out?
Probably do that similar to what we were doing last year on a monthly basis, maybe for different topics that we're looking at, so. Ms. Martin and I will collaborate, that's how we're doing those before we put those out.
It seems to really,
They're helpful.
it seemed to really, and if nothing else, like, I think it made folks feel better that you were soliciting that input. And I think really using that input.
Yeah,
Right.
we really did. It
So-
was good information.
Yeah. So I think that made a difference too, and just how folks felt about things. Okay, staffing report and exit interviews for 2020, 2022, 2021.
So I had a question here. What I'm trying to do is track the certificated teachers, you know, percentage that's BIPOC. And what you gave me was percent of total staff. What I'm looking for is what you had in this first one, which is percent of bracket. So it looks like to me that since teachers are about half of our total staff population, that you can just multiply the percent of total staff pretty much by 2. So what this tells me is from 2018, we were at about 23% teachers of color, and now we're at about 33. Is that a fair statement? Okay. And then, okay. Yeah, that's just kind of the number that I'm looking
That's for
for.
the certificated and yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought this was a great report, and I thought your bullet points at the end with some, you know, smart goals. It was really good, so thank you.
One question I have, noticed there were, actually, sorry, I can't do the math that fast, but on the slide where you broke down the number of staff by position. I was just curious how many folks that didn't capture, how many folks chose not to participate in that exit interview? Oh, was that somewhere?
I think we can figure that out by showing how many people are affected. And the people that,
Okay,
but I can get you that.
okay. If it's in here and I just didn't make the connection, I can find it.
I can send you.
Thought it was encouraging that the turnover rate for BIPOC staff is proportionally lower than other people. So, I mean, because when we're talking about BIPOC staff, it's one thing to hire them, it's another thing to retain them. And so turnover rate is the kind of measure of retention. So I think both of those are good.
I think, as there's a move towards other things, I'd love to start to capture hopefully diverse gender identities as well, if possible.
Yeah, I wanted to look at the positive interviews and the responses that we have got. And there's obviously a trend of the staff being overwhelmed and teachers saying that they don't receive support from administrators and the others. It says in one of the reflections, in the interview reflection, that on October 15th, we're going to be having a feedback system for the educators to fill out. Who will be developing that system?
I'll share that responsibility with, Martin, regarding the communication. We've spoken about that, but also implement them. People on what would be the best way to get the feedback.
Yeah, we think some feedback from the teachers and staff. would be
Yeah.
the first people.
Yeah.
And there was one of the additions involved that we're gonna implement the rule where administrators have to answer the answer. I think that's good, that's great, but I also wanted to acknowledge that not only is timely responses required, it's also if that they don't receive the support. So keeping in mind that teachers and staff need support and not only need their responses quickly, but also need their thoughts considered seriously and considered so that, it supports them and supports the students. And one last question. I'm not sure how principals are being evaluated. So is teacher and staff input and feedback part of how principals are evaluated, or is that?
It can show up in part of professional responsibility and creating a culture in the school. So, yeah.
I think it's important to specifically look into that specifically, because some of the responses, there was one where they said that they had a traumatic encounter with a principal, so it sounds like there's a power dynamic there. So, looking at that and see how the principals are performing and kind of everything that I remember by asking the teachers how they felt about that principal performance would be perfect.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Really, really great point. And I know we've been talking about that a little bit, kind of even at the superintendent level, is how can we really bring in more of like a 360 type review process? And I think that'd be really, really, really amazing to look into for our lead administrators as well.
Could we also have a presentation sometime about landed?
Yeah.
Did you already say that?
No,
I just missed that.
we've been going.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, yes, yeah.
Can you make it a joke?
Cool. Any other questions on that? Thanks again for the great presentation. Okay, geographical attendance data. Any questions on that? I'll be really super honest. I didn't get to spend as much time looking at it as I would like, so maybe might be more questions later on.
It'll come up later.
I didn't have time to look at the big report.
That's right.
Yes, full transparency.
It's not the most exciting area, but, you know, again, it'll come up later
Yeah.
because I did reference it. That's something we'll look at later.
Director Larson, did you have any questions for that one?
Yep.
Okay, and then, so that brings us lastly to increasing mental health supports. I'm actually gonna ask for just a moment. This came in a little bit late, so I'd actually like to take a second just to look here. So I mean, I think my, my biggest question is not really a question. It's more of like I've seen these bullet points before, you know, and I feel like at this point, I was really hoping that this would be here's how we are going to do this. So that's missing, and I'm really disappointed because now here we are 8 days away, 9 days away from school starting. And I worry that our students haven't been heard, and how we are gonna respond to mental health services in our school. So I don't really see anything actionable here. So my question is, where's the action?
Yeah, so I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier today as well. And again, getting some direct feedback from students as the school year starts. We want to make sure we have something in place by the end of September. So we do have some feedback previously. But we also want to know, like, what is the start of the school year feeling like for some of our students? Is there anything additional that we've got in place? We do have an interlocal agreement that we have with Beach Sound ESD. And we're going to be looking at additional services that we can provide should those arise. Or students tell us there's something additional that we need. We do want to continue to look at the referrals that we have from counselors. We do know there are some areas that are really high needs. Suicidal ideation is something we've heard quite a bit from counselors, especially at the high school level, even pre-COVID level. So that's definitely one of the areas that we're going to focus on, and how we can help support that in the best manner for students. And so that's, you know, we plan not to gather some of that direct feedback from students and parents in the next couple of weeks, right after school starts. So whatever we don't have in place currently, we're hoping to get in place with additional supports by the end of September.
So what is in place?
Yeah, can you tell us what staffing is in every school that deals with mental health? That's
I don't have that on hand right here, but I did just see a couple of hires that or positions we have posted right now. So I know we've got SEL counselor. I just signed one today for, I can't remember which school. But I can get that to you by the end of this week about additional staff we have coming in place to support our staff and students in this.
Do we have communities and schools in each building again?
We do have communities in schools, yes.
One staff person in each building?
I believe that's the staffing level, although I know they just received a gigantic infusion of money from, yeah, so I don't know how exactly that's gonna play out for everybody, but we do have that support in place.
And we have contracts with Rays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
but we don't know how many hours a week we're contracted for, or
So I think what we need then is, we'd like to see what's in place. As detailed as that, here's the entity, here's how many hours we have, here's what they are doing. That's what this should have been today. And I think too, like, we got student feedback at the end of last year. So if we're always just waiting, right, there are so many things that we could have planned for and put into place going into the school year with the understanding that we would build upon it or adjust it as student feedback came in. But to say that we just kind of sat on this, feels like we sat on our hands all summer around mental health supports. And now here we are again, 9 days away and we don't, there's nothing. So I almost want to request that literally by the end of the week, we get a report of, here's the services that are in place.
We'll send that out.
Okay. Okay.
And that would
Oh, could I
include-
add something?
Please.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with Dr. Hoover because I feel like this is something that really needs to happen within our schools, like within the middle schools, as well as our high school, as well as even elementary, because I feel like so many students like go through stuff and they don't know who to go through, who to go to. And I feel like it's something that our district needs to have in place, like at least by the beginning of the school year. And yeah, and I agree with Director Hoover.
Yeah, and I also want to like that it's important how we communicate those resources to the students because when someone is having suicidal ideations, they're scared that, you know, the council will report it to the family and oftentimes they are, you know, required reporters, medical reporters, and they have to. So we have to communicate clearly that this is a safe space or unless there's are situations where we will have to tell the parents so the students know and they don't feel like they're being like cherry bush and just, you know, have to like go to room because of trying to seek help. And also there's I want to be able to provide some other additional resources as well. And last previous school year, there was gonna be mental health, anti-suicidal ideation, like kind of presentation, but that program like backed out last minute. So if we could this year try to get some programs that advocate for that and have like a few presentations in schools to kind of strengthen that. That would be good, and there's also a lot of other resources for teams as well.
So many resources are available. We have to do a better job of linking them.
Where did we end up with the number of counselors at Foster?
4.
There are 4 full-time.
Correct.
Cool.
Plus one social worker.
Is that enough?
Well, of course, it's not enough, but that's what we were lobbying for, at least 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the general thing about, let's figure out what we have in place right now,
Yeah.
and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions about some of this one? Whew, we did it, y'all. That was a lot of presentations. Whew. All right,
Good job leading us through there, Carla.
okay. This will be easy. Action items. We started to do revenue, right? Okay, so we'll move to action items. So first I'll accept the motion to approve the human resources staffing report.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor of approval?
aye,
Okay, stands approved. Next is a B, approval of policies number 2161 and 3246. These are the policies we reviewed today. Second motion.
So moved.
those, yeah, second, those were not the ones we looked
They
at
what?
today. No.
3, 2,
These are ones that we looked
Wow.
at the last meeting, so.
just kidding.
It's okay, Carla.
Any questions or discussion? Wow, y'all. Okay, all in favor of approving not the board policies we looked at today, the ones we looked at last week are on special education. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then approval of the 2022-2023 board calendar. And I would actually like to motion to table this because we have some more information coming, hopefully soon, connecting dates to actual work topics.
Nice.
But yes.
I'll second
Seeing
that.
that. What would be the unintended consequence if we table?
It wouldn't be approved. I've already put the dates out. Of meetings, they're scheduled.
I don't think
Work
so.
sessions, the work sessions are not on this.
Okay, fine.
I don't think,
I'll accept the motion to approve.
so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? or questions? I'm like all over the place today, apparently with, because must have been thinking about something else. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, approval of the organizational chart for 2022-23.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then approval of the resolution number 924, adopting the 2022-2023 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Shouldn't be asked. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Birdsong, thank you for all of your work on that. All right, so that brings us to public comments. This is our second opportunity for public comment. If you are attending virtually and like to submit public comment, you can raise your hand. Enter into chat, and we have no live public comments, so I'll wait just a second. Okay, if there are no public comments, then we will move to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is officially adjourned. And I do want to name one thing, we actually have to have a closed, is that the correct? A closed session, so we'll kindly ask that everyone filter out fairly quickly, so that we can get that started. Thank you all so much.
A lot of items.
I know.
Thank you, Dennis.